The technology is way beyond me.
But the thing is like that. This is new to me. Waiting room. I can't wait.
Jill and Arlene entered the waiting room.
Shouldn't be a waiting room. Two, oh, one. Yes, we are. Yay.
Oh, that's a nice, bright picture.
Yeah, I did what I could.
You make the Dean Cemetery look so good.
I know, I want to go, right?
Nice touch of the green in front of the stone
I
there.
bumped up the colors and
Isn't
everything.
that great? Oh, I wouldn't want to encourage people to walk back there though.
Yeah, right. It was crazy.
What are these bottles? Are these from dug up in South Brunswick somewhere?
They were donations.
Dayton, H.M. Clark, Dayton. Guernsey milk. Not just milk, but Guernsey milk. Hey, remember, we got all these pencils to give away too.
Right.
Oh, well, I forgot about this stuff. Randy, are you putting all the prizes on one cart?
No, we should do that now.
We're gonna be the givingest people at the, not yet.
I'm having trouble here.
And this is a good container to put more candy in.
Ed, I don't know what I did here.
What'd you do, cancel them out?
I think so. I think I have to stop mirroring and try it again.
Line them up with a historical meeting in Akron, Ohio.
4837. Okay. All right, we'll be starting in a few minutes. I hope everybody can hear me out there. Can someone just give me just unmute themselves and let them know if they can hear me right now? That'd be great. Nobody.
So far, just the deaf mutes have tuned in. got a July poetry booklet all set.
Okay.
I just haven't run it off.
It's hard to tell. We have 5 people in the waiting room. We have 8 people altogether. So I guess it looks like they're entering. See, it's just hard for me to tell on this. It's a little bit different than having the screen, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we have 6 attending and 5 in the waiting room. I guess they just get admitted because I didn't admit anybody from here.
I can't wait till they're sitting around the table.
Okay, unless I hear any different. So yeah, if anybody could just unmute real quick and can you hear me? Just let me know so we can start. Anybody out there just want to say hello? You can hear me, and then we can begin the presentation.
I can hear you, Randy.
Okay, that might be good enough, right? Okay, so tonight's presentation is going to be about. We recently took a trek out through South Brunswick and visited some of the cemeteries in town. And these are some pictures and some things that we found. So I guess, Ed, we're going to start with the Dayton Cemetery. And this is how it looks from George's Road. And it was a beautiful day we went out. And so let's start with that.
I'll say that the Dayton Cemetery is one of the best kept cemeteries in South Brunswick. Well manicured and landscaped well, easy access and easy egress. And it's well worth a visit. And there are plenty of stones to check out. Many of the stones are readable from the 1800s. When you get back around 1830, 1820, and so forth, then it becomes difficult to read them. But there are plenty of stones to get the information off of. And there's a variety of stones too. So it makes for an interesting little trek.
Okay, so the first one, this is, well, it's backlit a little bit, but you can see how beautiful the cemetery is. But the one here that we have, I want to highlight is this is Milton Beekman, and Beekman, of course, everybody knows about the Beekmans in town, but he was a decorated veteran. He actually got shot down, I think, in Japan, and I saw his gravestone. I knew the story about it. You can kind of make it out here. But this is the story about, he actually was in the New York Times. They did an article on Milton Beekman. And it said Cranberry, but actually it's South Brunswick. But this is a snippet from the New York Times that is sort of his obituary. And it noted that he died in Japan. I think he died on an airplane. From the way I understand it, he was enlisted, he came back for a while, and then he went back again. And that's when he died. But yeah, this is it was interesting to find out that he actually was in the Times, made it into the Times.
Right. And since it's July, we're putting emphasis on military heroes that are connected to South Brunswick and the surrounding area, because if you go back far enough, and the Beekmans would go back far enough to the Revolutionary War, you're talking about the South Ward, which was the name of this area before it was called South Brunswick, and then of course South Brunswick Township. But the area actually went all the way down to Princeton, included Princeton, and this is before Mercer County. So when you talk about heroes and war heroes of the area, you really have to think of an enlarged area, not just South Brunswick as it is today, but all the way down to the dividing line between East Jersey and West Jersey. And so the South Ward was a huge area of New Jersey back in the day. And so when you're talking about heroes, like if you mention Cranberry, New Jersey, and you go back far enough, well, Cranberry was part of the South Ward. And actually, South Brunswick gave up land so that Cranberry could exist as a contiguous unit. And the same for Plainsboro. And so just keep that in mind, that this is a much larger area than it is today.
Because that was before Mercer and Somerset, right?
Right. Well, Mercer was created out of other counties.
Right.
And of course, named after General Mercer, Hugh Mercer of the who died at the Battle of Princeton.
Right.
And that, of course, that's one reason why that county is located where it is, to commemorate that.
Okay. The next one we have up is Reitmeyer, and Reitmeyer is it's a well-known name in town, and I just have a little bit of information here. I imagine it's the same family. It must be the same family, but the Reitmeyer house. This is the Reitmeyer house as it sits today on the right. It's on 762 George's, and they were a prominent family. I think they had a grocery store. I don't know if they ran it out of the house or not, but that's the Reitmeyer house, which I imagine is this same family.
Right. The store and the Reitmeyers were involved in farming too, as were most of the people who lived in South Brunswick in the 1700s and the 1800s, and still an awful lot of agriculturalists in the 1900s.
Okay. And next up we have, now it's hard to see, well, you can see it probably on your screen, but these are the Major. This is the Major family, and this is what Major Road
Right.
was named for, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now the next cemetery we visited that day was Fresh Pond Cemetery, and do you want to talk about Fresh Ponds?
Well, Fresh Ponds is an interesting area. The land, let me see, I forget, what was the woman's name?
Catherine Rue.
Oh, yeah, Catherine Rue. And she was married to her father was a Van Dyke. She was a maiden name was Van Dyke. And she willed some land right at the corner there, Fresh Ponds Road and Davidson's Mill Road. And a little chapel sprung up there, a school sprung up there, and a cemetery. And this cemetery has stones that go way back. Several of them are unreadable now. It's fairly well kept, and it's in a rustic area. And over to the side in the distance, probably in the wooded area, they say that was a slave burial ground where the burial sites were unmarked. So it has an interesting past to it. Both the chapel, the school, and the cemetery.
Okay. And the next one from Fresh Ponds, we have, this is the King family. I don't know if you know anything. I read somewhere where it said that some of the names were in German. I didn't see any German stones when we were there.
Right. Well, there were supposedly that Davidson's Mill Road, Fresh Ponds area. A lot of later immigrants were coming there. The Jewish egg farmers, like the Siegels and so forth, and there were German families that came in. So it was quite an interesting intercultural area. And some of them are buried there, and there are some German names in that cemetery. I don't know if you had pictures of them, because you couldn't take pictures of everything.
No, I didn't see any. we didn't go off into the side. There was some over on the side that might have been, but we didn't walk over there. It's
Yeah.
kind of in the woods a little bit.
Yeah,
And then this is another view of Fresh Pines. You know, it's nice because you have the former school in the background there.
right.
Okay, then after that, we went over to the Probusco Family Cemetery where Colonel Kraus is buried. And it looks like this from by where the warehouse is. It's built up like that, and you wouldn't really know what it was unless like Ed knows because he's visited there before.
Right.
But that's what it looks like from the road. And then when you get inside, it's a little bit overgrown. The gate was broken. It's overgrown inside. There's lots of scrub and trees, but we're able to walk in, and this is the stone. But as you can see, it's not very readable. But that's the Colonel Kraus's stone. You want to talk about him?
Yes. Colonel Kraus, this is a gentleman from St. Croix who was visiting in the colonies before the Revolution. And this was in 1775. There's a lot of mystery surrounding Colonel Kraus, and his connection with South Brunswick is also intriguing and also mysterious. He was in Philadelphia, probably on business matters, and he had to get up to New York City. And he decided to take the lower road. There were two main roads going through New Jersey, connecting Philadelphia to New York. The upper road was what you know of as Route 27. It's called the King's Highway. The lower road was called Lowry's Road, and Lowry's Road was originally built to connect the two capitals, the East Jersey and the West Jersey, Burlington to Perth Amboy. So you would take Lowry Road up to South Amboy, take a ferry across to Perth Amboy. You could also take a ferry to Staten Island. You could take a ferry from Perth Amboy over to New York. But anyway, Colonel Kraus stopped at what's the name of the tavern there?
Road Hall.
Road Hall Tavern, right near where Road Hall Road is, and South River Cranberry Road, which is the new name for Lowry Road. And anyway, stopped there and died, and under mysterious circumstances. So what I decided to do, since I was doing a Weatherall mystery series, is take the story and develop the story of what really happened to Colonel Kraus. And so I turned it into a murder mystery and entitled it 13 Stripes. And maybe later on, because we're talking about heroes in war, I'll tell you about 13 Stripes. But anyway, he died in the tavern and was buried at a site which became the Probusco Family Cemetery. The irony here is that there's no Probusco family stone left. The only stone in the Probusco Cemetery on land which is owned by the warehouses, is right next to it, is the Colonel Kraus stone. And most accounts indicate that the stone has been moved a few times and the body is not under the stone. In fact, none of the bodies are in that cemetery area, the area that's fenced off. And it's very poorly kept. It's really in bad shape. The stone is broken and it's lying face up. And it's sort of sad. The idea that we're trying to promote is to take these rogue stones that are in South Brunswick and put them together somewhere where we can have a memorial type walkway and feature these stones, such as the McDowell stone. I think there's a Stoltz stone that they have, a Stite stone, and a Kraus stone so far. and put them in one place, and people could come and see them. It's very difficult to park and check out this stone. And of course, it's unvisited 362 years, 2 days out of the year. Maybe I've been over there 3 times this past year just to check on it and see how it is.
And there's so much poison ivy in there. I couldn't believe it. Walked in, it's almost all poison ivy.
It's brutal. And soda cans and cinder blocks and all sorts of refuse there. And with the gate broken, anybody could go in.
Yeah, yeah.
They throw things in there and so forth.
Yeah, not in the best shape. The next one here is Dean Cemetery, and this one is in a place that's hard to find. I would say you have to know exactly where this is. It's actually it's on private property, right, Ed?
It's on private property. The landscaper who owns the property has cattle roaming the area, so you have to be careful of the bulls there. It's off of Major Road. If you take Dean's Pond Lane, which cuts through over to George's Road, and if you want to go to a cemetery that has a haunted feel, this is ideal. This is very overgrown. The first time I visited, it was in pretty good shape, and that was about 3 years ago. But since then, I don't think anybody has done any work over there. And you talk about poison ivy, more poison ivy here than in the Provasco Cemetery. But you have to cross a field after going around a fence, and then you get to this gate. And you see the wooden sign indicating the Dean's family cemetery, the Dean family cemetery.
And you think that sign is probably a homemade sign by the person who owns the property, right?
It might predate them. So whoever owned the property before, but it wasn't the Dean family that put that up there,
Right.
because the Deans were gone from South Brunswick, I think by the time you're in the 1940s, 1950s.
Okay. And yeah, and also I have to say, after this trip, the next day I found a little tiny deer tick on me, so I was lucky to get it and take care of it.
Oh yeah, this is overgrown. It's very woodsy. Another thing about the Dean Cemetery, the Dean family had slaves, several slaves, and the slaves are allegedly buried behind the stones, again in the wooded area, unmarked graves. I think it's significant that if and when these cemeteries are taken care of, landscape well, and so forth, that the area where the slave burial is should also be taken care of.
But if you look at the picture, it looks kind of nice here. This is, once you traipse through all the underbrush and go through the poison ivy, this is one of the more attractive headstones of Aaron Dean. You said there are more than one Aaron Dean, right?
Right, there are many generations of Aaron Dean. That name crops up many times.
So there's his headstone. That's a pretty big headstone. This is another one, another Aaron Dean, obviously someone else, a much smaller headstone. You can kind of make it out, but yeah, there was another one from...
And a much older stone.
Yeah. This one looks like it's from, I don't know, that looks pretty modern. That's 1800s, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, that's an 1800s writing on it, so forth, but I think the stone was put in there later.
Oh, you think it's even later? Okay.
Yeah, because it has a and the style of it. I think that's early 1900s.
Okay.
Just be my guess.
Okay, and then after Dean's, we went to
And that stone there,
this one.
that would be an early 1800 stone. I think that's the sandstone.
Yeah, you can make it out though. It's hard to tell from the photograph, but
Yeah.
you can definitely see when you blow it up. It does. You can see that it's Aaron Dean on there.
Yeah. And the Dean family goes back to the 1730s. I think that's when they first came.
Okay. And then the next place we visited was right back of Burger King on right off of Route 1, St. Barnabas Episcopal Cemetery. That's the way it looks from Sandhills Road.
Yeah, that's the way it
Major
looks,
road, actually.
looks now.
Yeah.
The first time that I checked this cemetery out, which wasn't long ago, maybe about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, they had a wooden fence that was fronting the where the stones are with a gate. And that was destroyed because there are a lot of people that come up the hill there, on the start of Major Road, and they make a U-turn there to get back because the Route 1 thing is crowded and there's a lot of vandalism. So I believe the Spillator landscapers are taking care of this because there's Spillator gravestones in there.
Yeah, that's one of the, well,
And so this is their second try at putting something up there to front the cemetery area.
so this is Gulick. How does that, a lot of people pronounce it differently.
A common one is Gulick.
Gulick?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's Gulick, which is a prominent name.
Married to Higgins, which is also a prominent name.
And then we have Delizio.
Former mayor.
Yep. And also Spillatore. You can kind of make it out. It's a little bit hard to see. Spillatore, yeah.
Yeah, and the old St. Barnabas Church burned down.
Yeah.
And that was in front of the cemetery there.
So it was really close to the road.
Yeah.
Kind of where the part where you park where the little turnaround is.
Yes. Yeah. Well, now it's a turnaround. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we went to the Washington Cemetery, which is completely different from anything else in the township, I would say. This is a very educational trip into the Washington Cemetery. And that's the, as you can see, there's, it's written in Hebrew, and there's very unusual stones. And one of the things they do is they put stones on top when people visit. You can kind of make it out on top of these headstones. People place little stones to signify that they visited the cemetery. And then there's also little places there. I guess what they put their candles in there, they would burn, right? And
as I understand it, candles and prayers and things like that. And then where a noted rabbi.
Okay,
they have a building like with a dome, that type of thing.
Yep.
And so they honor leaders that way. As I understand it, this whole complex is 3 cemeteries in one. And there are several Orthodox Jewish groups that are utilizing the cemetery, but there is a non-sectarian section. And so that they have it set up. On one side of the road, you have certain groups, other side of the road, you have other groups. And then as you go towards 130 and the end of it, the back of it, you have a non-sectarian group.
And when we stopped into the office, the attendant there told us that sometimes they have pilgrimages when people come down from Brooklyn area to visit somebody. Since there are thousands visiting there per year to a prominent rabbi or or prominent person.
And there are some very prominent people buried there that nobody really knows about in the local area unless you're familiar with the setup of the cemetery.
And this is another place where they put candles or prayers in the little structure before the headstone. And the next place we went to is Von Quick, and this is right on
Beekman.
This is right on Beekman.
Yeah.
And it's pretty well marked. I mean, you can see it from the street. And
this is another one that had poison ivy when we visited. But it's interesting, Randy, since we visited, I've checked it out. I think the scouts or some group got in there and they
got cleaned up.
Took care of it. They cleaned it up.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So it's a nice place to visit. It's a small cemetery. It's got some war heroes going back to the Revolutionary War. You have Colonel Quick. He's in there. So, it's worth a visit.
It's very
Fenced in.
accessible.
Yeah, it's very accessible, and you can park on the side road. It won't be a problem getting in there.
And this is another, must have been a
This
second
is
stone
Abraham
opener.
Quick.
Yeah.
He's probably the most famous one in that cemetery.
And that's probably not the original stone, of course.
No.
Yeah. The next one we went to is another place that's kind of off the beaten path. The Hush Roberts burying ground, the Hush Cemetery, or Aaron Hush is buried.
Right.
And that's his stone right there. And they actually have flags on it. Somebody planted it because he's a Civil War hero. And if you don't know who Aaron Hush is, I'm just going to skip forward. Uh-oh. I have to wait for it to catch up. This is just a quick little bio of Aaron Hush. He was a Civil War hero from South Brunswick, and this is where he's buried. He was in some really prominent battles in the Civil War. And the way I understand it, Ed, because he was black, he couldn't enlist here for the Civil War. I heard he had to go to Philadelphia to Pennsylvania because they didn't have any way for him to enlist here.
Yeah. Yeah, he had a very strong desire to get involved and served his country well. He was in many battles. I have a whole list of them.
Sure.
But the interesting thing about the burial site, in our archives and so forth, were directions how to find the site, and it's on private property. It's in the very rear area of the homeowner, who is off Danton Road. And the irony is that you're supposed to get permission to go visit the site because it is on private property. But you can access it by going Sand Hill Road to Greer Lane. And Greer Lane has a no outlet sign on it. But right up on the top of the rise there for Greer Lane, you can park, walk about, say about 50 feet.
Yeah.
And there's a stone. There's Aaron Hush's stone, and it actually overlooks Sand Hill Road. So it's not really difficult to get to, but the directions that were given for years and years and years, and when Al Cady, he was the one who found the stone, it make it real complicated to go to it and locate it and give honor to Aaron Hush, but you really don't have to do all that stuff. There are some other stones there, and there's a newer stone there. Remember that new stone with the Dutch name on it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Tenbrook.
Yeah.
And so not only is Aaron Hush buried there, and I'm pretty sure that's where he is buried. That's his. In other words, the stone hasn't been moved. This guy is probably the most. I'd say he's the most famous war hero from the olden days for South Brunswick. Now, there were several going back to Revolutionary War times, and some of them were of high office. I mean, Colonel John Wetherell was a colonel. There were others, and you had Abraham Quick and so forth. But most of them were militiamen who fought for a short amount of time and, didn't do a great deal of heroic deeds. Whereas Aaron Hush was right there on the front lines in many battles, and it should be an honored war veteran.
Yeah, you can see the proximity of the houses right back in this, like a few feet from the headstones.
Yeah, those
There's
are
a
the
fence.
houses for Danton.
and there's somebody's pool right there. So it's very
Yeah.
close to the residences.
Yeah.
But also, what's unusual about Aaron Hush, in addition to his whole story, is that a picture of him exists. So a lot of times, you hear about these people, and it's interesting, but he's unique in the fact that we have a photograph of him from the early
Right.
1900s.
Now, Randy, when he passed away,
Mhm.
there was just one article in the local paper about his passing.
Okay.
This is what it said. Aaron Hush, colored, a veteran of the Civil War, died at the home of his son, Charles Hush, on Friday, his death being due to old age. The funeral services were held in the chapel of the Reformed Church here Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock. That's it. That's all that was said.
That's it. Yeah, no fanfare.
And then Al Cady came along.
And there's
And-
Al right there.
And Al was walking through the woods and all that, stumbled upon it. So Aaron Hush was forgotten for years and years and years. And Al Cady found the stone and rectified the situation. And Aaron Hush has been honored many times since then.
And what's interesting too is we're talking about Hush now, and we've talked about the Beekmans before. But when I look through the census records, trying to find out some information about the Beekmans, I saw that Aaron Hush's son had worked for the Beekmans because he was listed as living at their residence. So it's a small town, and his name's still there. Everybody's connected. So it was interesting to find that out.
Everybody knew everybody else and they knew their business.
Right. So that's it for the cemetery tour. Do you want to talk about your book? Because we're going to talk about National Night Out and some of the other things that are going on for the History Day. Do you want to highlight your book?
You on the 13th Stripe?
Yeah. So this is Ed's book that he just completed 2 months ago. It's called 13 Stripes. It's the Weather All Mystery, but it's also well, Ed, you should talk about it a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Randy. This has really been a labor of love, and it was a challenge too, because when I write historical fiction, I'm basically a historian. But what happens is you reach so many dead ends, especially if you're going back to the 18th century and before, and you're left with sort of half a story and a lot of what ifs, woulda, shoulda, coulda. What I tried to do was combine some history that a lot of people don't know about. George Washington marched through South Brunswick more than a half a dozen times. None of these accounts have ever been documented and written about. And what I wanted to do was deal with the story of Colonel Krause, but also deal with the times of what was going on in 1775. So what I did was I discovered that General Washington, when he was appointed general in Philadelphia, had to get up to his so-called army, which was a ragtag bunch up in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And those who escorted him was the Philadelphia Troop of Horse, led by Abraham Marco. Now, by coincidence would have it, Abraham Marco was from St. Croix. And he left his plantations in charge of his son, and he took off for Philadelphia after his wife died, was very successful in business, remarried, started a new family there. And he was the one who formed the Philadelphia Troop of Horse, mostly the sons of wealthy businessmen and so forth in the city of brotherly love. And he had an idea for a troop horse flag, which contained 13 stripes. And I thought, this is an interesting thing. And as I checked it out, it turned out that they escorted George Washington from Philadelphia all the way up to New York City. And then he was escorted by Connecticut troop of horse up to Cambridge, Massachusetts. But the troop of horse was carrying the flag with the 13 stripes. This precedes Betsy Ross. And you can read about it. You can research this and find out that Marco had the design. So I incorporated that into the story. That's the start of it. And then Colonel Krause is going to visit Marco. And Colonel Krause is going to ask to have a flag made for him for a ship that he's planning to build. And that flag just has 13 stripes. So the seamstress becomes a main character in the story. She happens to be a spy for the British. And they're trying to connive a way to get the goods on Marco because Marco is a dyed-in-the-wool patriot, even though he's a Danish citizen. Very complicated story. So she's in cahoots with this agent of the king who is out of New York City. And together they have this scheme. So anyway, Colonel Krause ends up getting his flag just before he leaves Philadelphia, heads by carriage over to our area, stops over at the Road Hall Tavern. I don't want to give away the whole plot of the story, but it has something to do with some very nasty stuff that the seamstress has done, that the spy has done, and some other character has done. And Colonel Krause ends up being buried in the Probosco Cemetery. The people who are trying to solve whatever crime has been done are the Wetherill sons of John Wetherill, because John Wetherill's in Trenton at the provincial Congress for New Jersey. So the sons, that's John Jr. and Vincent. Vincent is a war hero in the Revolution. He's going to die in prison, New York City, the Sugar House prison. Anyway, they're the two leading Wetherill characters in the story. And then there are some other Wetherills in there too, George Wetherill, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, Krause gets buried in his 13 stripes flag. And if they ever find his coffin and his corpse, I hope that the flag is actually there because I made that up. But it would be very ironic if it was found that way.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna find it, but
Yeah, well, they're not going to find the flag. They're not going to find the coffin. They're not going to find the bones. It's probably buried under the turnpike. Tell you the truth. But anyway, the manuscript is available in the library to be read in the library. And if anybody really wants a copy to peruse and so forth and critique, I can make that available to you. Just tell Randy at the reference desk and you'll be all set.
yeah, just let me know. Okay, thanks, Ed. And the other thing is National Night Out is next Tuesday. And we're going to be at Roland Park at 6 o'clock. So we're going to have our table there, along with some literature to hand out to everyone, and we'll have some props. We'll have a display with some of the historical things on it from the township. So we're going to be out there at 6, and it'd be great if people would stop by and just say hello, or if you want to hang out for a while, we'll be there. And we're also going to have the Deep Metal Detecting Club. They were there, I think, when we had it 2 years ago before everything happened in 2019. So, and they're going to have metal detecting and some things that they found, and they'll have detectors out so they can show kids how you can use a detector to find things. And I like to call it history beneath our feet. That's something that actually Paul had used for an article. So they're going to be there too. So that's next Tuesday. The other thing I wanted to mention was we are planning the scavenger hunt, the South Historical Society scavenger hunt, like we did last year. and we're going to have 4 or 5 stops. One of the stops is going to be the Fresh Ponds Cemetery and School, and the Fresh Ponds Chapel. So that's an easy one. There was 2 things there. It'll be 1 stop, easy to get to. Easy to park. And the South Brunswick Moose Lodge was the Jewish Community Center. It was built in 1942. So they agreed to be part of it. And what's nice about having it at these places, we can talk about what it was at one time or the history behind it. But the people there now who are running the organizations will be able to talk about who they are and what they can offer the community. The other place is Pioneer Grange #1. That's going to be another stop. So we'll be able to, we'll be there, and the people that run it will have their information out there too. After that too, in the municipal building, I don't know if people know, there's these really huge murals in the municipal building of some historic pictures of South Brunswick. And we're going to have the building open, and people can go in there and view these. They're floor to ceiling murals of great photographs of the township from let's say like the early 1900s, maybe late 1800s, and we'll have someone there stationed to talk about what those photos are to get your passport stamped. And if anybody doesn't know about the scavenger hunt we did last year, you'll be finding out more about that. I'll be glad to tell you about it. But it was great because people could travel around the township and find out some of the history that's there, and also find out about the organizations that are there presently now and are still active. Yeah, I don't know if people can see, and I don't know if we need the props now because I'm not sure if they can view it. I don't know if people can see. I can't tell. This is new technology with the Zoom rooms here, and I apologize.
Yeah,
We've got a couple of hiccups with it, but this was this was the latest acquisition.
The whole table.
Mark on the table. This was somebody donated this to us. It's a very heavy plaque. It was dedicated to Charles Silk, who was famous in not in South Brunswick, in Middlesex, well known in Middlesex. He did work with tuberculosis, and this plaque is from 1949. It doesn't have a really strong connection to South Brunswick because the person who owned this, yes, you can only see the PowerPoint. Okay, hold on a second. Let me see if we switch it now. Hold on. Yeah, sorry about these technical difficulties. Now, I don't know if you can see it now. You can just write on the screen or just say if you can see it. This is the plaque I was talking about. It's very heavy, and it doesn't have a strong connection to South Brunswick. A woman who lived in South Brunswick worked for a firm, for a company, and then when the company left, they didn't take the plaque with them, and she thought it was important. It is kind of interesting, and it's an old plaque from '49. Okay, so you can't see it. I'm sorry about that. I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't understand what's going on with the. I don't know why you can't see it. I'm gonna have to look into what's going on with the Zoom rooms. It's like I said, it's new technology. I can take a picture of this. I can send it to everyone, but it's just something lately that we've gotten as came in as a donation. It's an interesting donation, and I'll send everybody a picture of it tonight so you can see what it is.
You have to use your imagination.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So anyway, the new technology is always a little challenge, and mostly it's worked okay, but this one is a little new for me, and I'll have to get more familiar with it for the next time. So how it works for us, though, we're not going to meet in August. We're not. We'll have the next meeting in September, and I'll let everyone know about that. But National Night Out is next week. It'd be great if people can stop by. I'd be glad to see it. And any other thing we'll be talking about. And Ed has something to add.
I just wanted to finish on a strong note.
Okay, what's that?
Well, since it's July, and I mentioned that we were emphasizing heroes in South Brunswick, especially war heroes, I thought I'd pique your curiosity and read a poem that I wrote several years ago about a famous person that you all know who actually passed through South Brunswick on Route 27, back when it was called the King's Highway. I won't mention the person's name, but this person was a hero at the time of the American Revolution. But his pen was mightier than his sword. He actually carried no sword. So those are the clues.
Okay.
It's entitled Our Trumpet Note. One volunteer sits alone by a dying blaze, while others sleep in the evening mist. Brother to the cause, delays the foe again. By dimming light, words from this fiery soul do find the page that will be held and read with pride at the head of every regiment. What man is this who gives voice in such a timely way? In the midst of crisis and pitiful retreat, he has become our trumpet note. Does anybody know who that is? Who passed through South Brunswick in the late fall of 1776 when George Washington was retreating out of New Brunswick and an encampment was set up on the border, Route 27, between Somerset County and Middlesex County, for the troops who were then having to hightail it all the way down to Trenton and across the river and eventually get into Pennsylvania. Who was that person?
We got one. Somebody's guessing Hamilton.
Alexander Hamilton. No, Hamilton was still in New Brunswick, one of the last people to leave. He was firing his cannons. He was captain of a cannonade group, and he was overlooking the Raritan River and causing the British all sorts of trouble trying to cross the Raritan River. So it wasn't Alexander Hamilton, but that was a good guess.
Anybody else want to take a guess?
In the poem were certain clues. One is the word crisis.
Am I
Another
on?
clue is
Can I say
pause.
Thomas Paine?
Thomas Paine, you are
Hey.
correct. And if I were giving prizes tonight, you would have won the prize.
Who was
used to-
that?
Al Clegg. He used to
Oh,
live.
There
already
you
now.
go, Al.
He,
Thomas Paine passed through South Brunswick in 1776.
and he lived in the
Oh,
town
And
that I grew up in.
nobody ever mentions it or knows about it.
Wow, that is a big deal.
Yeah, of
Well,
course it is.
Paine?
And the thing is, by the campfire of the encampment, he was probably writing some of the things that went into his famous writings that we know of today.
Wow.
That ends our meeting.
So that's it for tonight. So yes, like I said, thanks for coming out. Sorry for the technical difficulties. I'll work on those, so hopefully it won't happen again when we meet again in September. But don't forget, next week is National Night Out. Also, the calendar is coming along. It's just about finished, so that should be available in September. But just wanted to give everybody an update, and hopefully see you next Tuesday. Right?
Okay, very good. Yeah,
Okay.
tell everybody about the calendar. It's coming.
Yeah, it's
It's
coming out.
The calendar's coming. The calendar's coming, just like the British.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Right.
All right. Oh, that technology, you'll be working on that for years. Jeez.